Hey everyone, I'm James from SoundLink Magazine, and you're watching SoundlinkTV. Today I'm joined by my guest, drummer for Signs of the Swarm, Bobby Crow. Bobby, this is take two. I really appreciate you coming on.
Of course, yeah.
Forgot to
Thank
click
you.
the record buttons. That's on me, everybody. Um, so you're one of the original members of the band, correct? Like, you've been around since the start.
Yeah, technically, like I didn't start the band, but I came into it really, really early. So at the time, there was singer, guitar player, and it had a couple other people in and out like writing songs, and but they didn't have like a solidified lineup. I think it was, and I think they had a drummer at the time too. And like it was just the three of them in a practice room, posted a video on Facebook and said they were looking for members to kind of round out the band. So I've been here since the beginning, but I can't say that I started like named the band or anything like that. They already had a couple songs written
I'm just
at the
curious.
time.
The reason I ask is I'm just curious from your perspective as an early on member, just like what has been the growth from your perspective of the band from the early days to now? Obviously, there's been a lot of growth. So I'm curious from a member's perspective, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean it's been 12 years of my life now. I was 18, maybe going on 19 at the time. I'm 30 now. So I've spent my whole 20s, I've spent so much time in this band. I've grown up with my wife and everything the whole time since then. And it's really weird to go from just being like to think about just going from being like a kid playing VFW shows in basements and all that. And I did that for years in other bands too, just like local band stuff for like 5 years before I came into this band. And it's pretty crazy. I never, I think the first time we ever did a full US tour was like 7 or 8 years ago. And I remember at that point being like, that's all I ever wanted from this. I just wanted to do a full US tour. Never really thought about going any farther than that. So everything that's happened since then is just like a bonus. It's always like just kind of checking stuff off the list now. Kind of, it's weird having to like reassess your goals a little bit. Thinking about like, well, what now? There's always more. There's always more to do, and I'm always hungry for more. But it's definitely like thinking about that time. It's just kind of like everything has been a surprise to me as much as it may be to anybody else.
And I imagine you guys are very receptive of like a lot of our earlier guests are from the Ohio Valley area. Six Deep,
Really?
yeah, Six Deep and Dead
Oh, nice.
Cassette
Yeah.
are all from the Ohio Valley area. Um, and I'm just like, first of all, that scene is crazy. That Ohio scene is insane.
Yeah,
Uh,
it used to be so many local bands. Like when I was growing up, there were so many bands, and a lot of people were doing DIY touring and doing show trades to get other bands to come to our town so that they could go and play their town. And there's not nearly as many bands anymore, but a lot of the people that I grew up with when I was like 13 through 20 have gone on to do some really cool things. Like Mike White is an Orthodox, they're crushing it. 156 Silence, all those dudes are crushing it. Trey Myers is a friend of mine. He's got some bands. He works for Lorna Shore. Like it's just cool to see all these people, doing something with it after all this time.
and I'm a little curious as I'm going back to kind of the progress of the band. When CJ departed, and I don't want to get too much into all of that, but when CJ departed and David came on, how was that transition to get David into comfortable with that? Because he hadn't toured. I don't believe he had toured when you guys asked him, right?
Yeah, not heavy. He'd done a little bit of touring, but mostly like a week or two here or there. I think the longest he had done is like maybe 10 days or 2 weeks at the time. Um, I think he did a couple tours like in a SUV and one in a van or something like that. And I mean, we'd really only been touring for like a year and a half, even at that point. Like we did, a couple weeks here and there, but we'd only been touring like heavy for like maybe a year and a half, 2 years. So, we were a little more prepared, I think, than maybe he was, but he came into it really well and he knew what he wanted to do. From the time that we found out we needed another singer, because we had our longest run of tours up to that point coming up 11 days after that. So we had 11 days to figure out, finding someone that could do almost 80 days of touring nonstop, pretty much.
And he said, I think, that he didn't even know he got the gig, even though you guys are like, I thought you knew you had the gig.
It was kind of like, we had, we'd hit him up because he lived close to us, and we were good friends with him, and he had a great voice. But it was definitely a different style of screaming for him than what he was doing at the time. But he had a super unique, just like awesome voice. Like me and some of the other guys in the band, had been listening to his other band for a while, and we played shows together and stuff. But so we knew we really liked him, and we were open to the idea. But at the time, everything happened so fast. It was just like, hey, we need somebody to come on tour. And then also you want to make sure you get along with them on the road and stuff, because you never know how things work out when you're away from home for months at a time, But yeah, I think about halfway through the first tour with him, we pretty much officially gave him the job. It was more so like, I think he couldn't get into Canada at the time. It was so last minute, he didn't have a passport. So we had someone to fill in for us in Canada. And so he flew home from like the West Coast back here. And right before he flew out, he's like, I'm just curious, like, you think I'm getting the gig? And we were just like, oh yeah, for sure. Like you've crushed it. Thank you. Because we would have had to drop 2 months of touring if he didn't come through so hard, so last minute. He came to my basement. We had like 4 practices in my basement, and then went on tour.
So did I hear correctly that Will Ramos also auditioned? Like, did he send in a tape?
Yeah, he sent us like a YouTube video, or he did like Cesspool of Ignorance, and this was like maybe while we were on the tour or right before we left. It was really quick. I don't know how he even heard what had happened yet, because it wasn't really out into the world or anything yet. But yeah, he just sent us a video of him. I think he did Cesspool of Ignorance, and he's awesome. We were friends with him from years before. Like he was in Awakened Providence, and we had booked a show in Pittsburgh it was like Awakened Providence, Body Snatcher, somebody else, and we were on that show, and we hung out, and then I don't remember exactly what happened, but like the show got dropped, and we ended up moving it to like a VFW somewhere like the day of. Anyways, so we were friends with him, and he has an amazing voice, obviously. But like that video that he sent us was like a 1-for-1 cover of the song. And obviously we were going through a lot of emotions at the time. And I was just kind of like, man, I don't really want just like a continuation of what we've been doing. I didn't want it to sound that similar. And the thing is, not saying that he sounds like him now. It's just Will is incredibly talented, and he did an amazing job at like perfectly recreating the sound of that song. And I think at the time we were just like, we want to go a different direction. We wanted to try something different. We liked Dave's kind of more like mid-range, barky, bitey kind of, where it just feels like he's laying into you. But that was very much what he did with his old band. So, but yeah, sorry for such a long response to that. But yes, he did send in a video, and he was the only other person that did it. It was just like him and Dave were the only 2 people that were in the running.
And now, is it crazy to think that now they both just recorded Clouded Retinas together?
Yeah, it's cool. I think even when Dave came along at first, he didn't know that Will tried out or anything, because we just didn't really put a lot of merit into it. Like, nothing against Will at all. Like, we're very good friends. We were friends then. It was just like, he lived pretty far away from us. Dave lived, right next door, and he dropped everything to go on the tour, and had a great voice that we really liked what he was doing. So we kind of already had our answer by the time Will hit us up, and it was just kind of like, yeah. But yeah, anyways, yeah, definitely it's crazy. Like, we've done some shows with them over the last couple of years, and we kind of joke about it and laugh about it and stuff. And
you're about to go on another tour with them where they're headlining, which is even crazier.
Are we? Wait, what?
I think so. I may be wrong. Hang on. I may be wrong.
I was like, I don't think so.
Somebody's doing
I wish we were.
I know they're about to come to Greensboro, but regardless.
Yeah.
Either way, I still think it's crazy.
We'll be on tour with them again eventually.
Yeah. No, I knew you guys were coming.
It comes and goes. Yeah.
But I just think it's crazy how similar their paths were almost. They're both in deathcore. They both replace CJ. They're both very good at what they do, and their vocals are very good. It's uncanny how similar they are.
Yeah, it was, and also too, like, not to speak too much into Lorna's world, but they had actually reached out to not Dave himself, but somebody else about getting in contact with Dave, trying out for Lorna back when Tom left, and then they ended up with CJ. So it's like a very weird, like, they almost ended up with Dave. Well, they could have, like, didn't quite make it that far. And the same for us. It's like there could have been a universe where they had Dave and we had Will, and things could have been totally different. Maybe none of us would have made it as far as we have. It's so weird to think about.
It's like a
That way.
Bermuda Triangle of musicians almost. It's a little
Yeah.
bit just crazy.
Yeah, and really kind of like unbeknownst to everybody at the time. Like, we've all kind of come to learn these things over the years since then. It just comes up in conversation, and then someone's like, "Oh, really? I didn't even know that." Like, I think Adam didn't even know about Will trying out for us back then until recently.
But now talking about Clouded Retinas and the new album, like the motive going into that new album was be more pissed. But like, what was it that was like you want to be more pissed? What was it about it that you're like, we got to change it up and just fuck shit up essentially?
Yeah, it's like it kind of went two ways. Like, we've always just kind of been an angry, pissed off band, but we always try to do the last couple of records. We've tried to do some more like atmospheric stuff and like some industrial noises and stuff like that. Just trying new things and trying to learn new programs and stuff. And when we went to do I Won't Let You Die, when we went to track that last year, we'd had a couple other songs, and we were diving like really deep into the like industrial like synth sounds and stuff like that, and like just noises like damaged drums and making noises in my basement and trying to put them into music and stuff. And we did a lot of that, and there's a lot of that on the record. So when we had like 6 songs done at that point, and we only had like 2 months left to write before we went to the studio, I just kind of had a moment of like, well, I'm really good at just writing stupid, heavy songs, and I need to get as many ideas out here as I can for Dave to have time to work on lyrics and vocals and stuff. So just started pumping out a bunch of heavy songs, and just because that's what I'm comfortable with, and the other stuff like really takes a lot of thought for me to like sit and explore new sounds and stuff. And I spent a lot of time doing that, like probably too much time, to the point where I was like, okay, I have like 6 songs and I want to have like 14. So I set a goal for myself to do like 2 songs a week from I think like November through early January. And I pretty much hit that goal. I had like 10 songs done on top of the ones that we already had. And yeah, it's just kind of easy. I hate to say easy, but it's easier for me to work, with that goal in mind than like trying new things. So then it's cool, we get to kind of work the things together. Like, I like these bits from this song, and then we kind of mesh all that together. So I don't think it was so much like the whole album overall needed to be more pissed. I think it was more just like, okay, I spent my time having fun, just jerking off, trying different things. Now I need to focus and just write a bunch of heavy shit, because that's what we are.
And when you mentioned, I Won't Let You Die, was that kind of a precursor to what's to come for this album, or was that more of just like when you played Natural Selection on tour with Chelsea Grin, and that was like, okay, this is your preview, let's see the reception, and do they fuck with it?
Yeah, I think that song was cool because we knew we wanted to do a single in the summer, and all the songs were labeled like summer single 1, 2, 3, or whatever. And then that one ended up getting like a different working name and this and that. But we kind of went in. It was nice to just focus on like one thing. Like, we had a couple different ideas, but we weren't really worried about like, oh, we need 20 songs and for an album to cut down to 10 songs or whatever. And that was when we really started trying a couple different things. And I really like soundscaping, and like one thing that's really cool. I sit here and when I have all of our tracks on my computer where I can solo things out and all the recording. Honestly, if you listen to our music with like no drums, no guitar, no vocals, no bass, and just like the atmosphere, like the vibe building, like effects, synths, stuff like that. I want that to have its own feeling too, where it makes sense. Um, it makes sense without everything else. Like every piece kind of needs to say its own statement. So I think that's something we learned a lot from that. Doing that, I'm doing Low and Empty, and then I feel like we did really well with I Won't Let You Die with that, where it's like everything kind of has a place and it's building and building, and we definitely carried that into this record. We learned a lot, and we also learned a lot of like what works and what doesn't work for us, like trying to fit things into our sound.
And there's less trendy moments per se, unlike Amongst the Low and Empty when that kind of blew up. But then there's still some moments of that on this, but there's also like it finds its own identity in a way too.
Yeah,
I'm
we
curious.
definitely.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say we definitely like obviously we want there to be moments and crazy shit happening, but I also, we've talked about this a lot. It's like if you're chasing that moment, if you're chasing like a viral thing and you're just trying to write music, like write something, like, oh, this is going to be a hit. This is going to blow up on TikTok or whatever. It's like you're kind of chasing a dragon. You're kind of like setting yourself up for failure in a way, I feel like, honestly. Because then too, if like that 10 seconds or whatever isn't something you're really passionate about and it doesn't blow up, then now you've written something that you don't really like for, to impress people who didn't care about it. So I think we try more to just write songs that we like. And if the moments happen while we're writing, then cool. That's I think the most organic way to do it and still feel like proud of your work and like you're not, selling out to a fucking algorithm machine.
It's also weird to think about, like, when you're thinking trendy TikTok songs, you're not thinking deathcore. Like, you're not thinking, like, when I think of trendy TikTok songs that are deathcore, I'm thinking Phil's Chin Check, I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
Y'all's, and I'm thinking, Will's screams in his first album or his first EP. And I'm into the Hellfire, and I'm like, that is really essentially the big ones to me. So, like, deathcore TikTok trends are not a thing. So the fact that you guys got that going was crazy, and that really blew you up. But you were already blowing up at that time. I mean, that album was insane.
Yeah, I feel like we've had a couple, like, peaks and valleys in our career. It's like I said, it's been almost 12 years now that I've been doing this, or at least 11, probably 12 since I started talking to the guys. But we had like a bump pretty early on with like Slam Worldwide and Chudcore when Chudcore was a thing before that all fell apart, and then it kind of tapered off for a while. We were just touring super hard, and I feel like we weren't as inspired writing. It was just more like trying to rebrand, trying to keep the name going, and then, like I said, now it's been more of like, trying to write music for fun, just because we want to write music again. It felt more like work for a while, but that's the thing.
With this new album, you got Josh Schroeder producing it again. What was that relationship like to get him to come on and do this? And then, did it meet your expectations in a way, or did it exceed everything?
Yeah, I think this time it was pretty much met expectations. The first time we went with him totally exceeded expectations because we didn't really know, what we were getting ourselves into. I went to track drums with him for a single in 2021 or 22 for Unbridled, I think. And we just tracked drums there, and it was just me. I just drove up one day by myself and stayed in a hotel, tracked drums with him, and left. And I just really liked him. I got along with him really well. And he's just like, him and I joke we're kind of kindred spirits, But so when we came back to do an album with everybody there, it was like, a lot of mental warfare. Like he's a very great dude, but he is really good at getting in your head and kind of learning things about you without you realizing that's what he's doing, and figuring out what you like and what you don't like without having to ask you, what do you like? What do you want to sound like? What do you don't like? I think that's a really special thing because it keeps you from being like, well, I want to sound like this band and then sounding like that band, So this time coming back, it was definitely, we knew what we were getting into. We were going to go. It was winter again. He lives in the middle of fucking nowhere where everything's covered in ice, you know. So we're like, okay, we're gonna go be stuck in a box for a month in winter, you know, with this psychopath dude fucking pushing us. But he's great. He's one of my favorite people in the world. He's awesome.
When you're writing this new album, what was the process like to piece all that together? Like you're writing the lyrics and the instrumentals and all that. What was that process like for you guys?
Yeah, musically, it's a lot of me just sitting here. I'm turned around right now, but this is my little studio setup here. Um, it's just a lot of here, just sitting with the guitar and just finding some notes and just working through it, working through it, working through it, and trying to find a stride. And I send something off to the guys. They send me something back. A lot of times, Carl will send me a riff, and then I take it here and mess with a little bit, try to get inspired by that to write a song around it or whatever, and then I'll send it back to him, and then he adds his thing and that kind of thing. And then lyrically, I think with Dave, this time around, he wanted to write something very personal to him, but also that could be taken in a way that's relatable to a lot of people, which I think is usually the goal of anyone who's trying to get a message across. That I think a lot of the times in the past we write a lot of just like grandiose things about good and bad and or just fight songs or whatever. But I know he had a bit of a revelation this time coming into it where he's like, I have stuff I want to say and I want to find a meaningful way to say it. And he did a really good job of that. And a lot of it is, like I said, me just sitting here, getting as much of a song done as I can, send it off, get some ideas from the guys, and then he'll start working through lyrics. And because he writes a lot of lyrics in advance too. And then he'll kind of go through and see if anything matches up, fits the vibe of a song. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes he'll tell me an idea he has for something he wants to say, and then I'll try to make a song that sounds like the vibe of what he's trying to say, which is really cool. It's a nice like kind of backwards way to think about writing metal, starting with words, which is more of like a pop thing. It's not really as much of a metal thing. It's usually riffs, but yeah, we don't really have a formula. It's a lot of me sitting here just grinding through it, figuring out what does work, what doesn't work, trying not to do the same shit that we've already done, and everyone's pretty quick to call me out on that, which I appreciate.
I just, you mentioned David had a lot to say on this record and it was like very personal to him. I'm curious because I'm not a musician. I love music, but I don't play any instruments. I'm curious when you're writing the instrumentals for these, how do you as a musician make that emotional connection through your sound?
That's a good question. I don't. Sometimes it's really easy, and sometimes it's really hard in a way that I just don't think about it. Like actually, Clouded Retnas, like the chorus of that song, came together because he came to me with we were in the studio and lyrics in a pattern for the lyrics. So he'd had a lot of the lyrics planned out, and then we're starting to think about like, well, what's a good way to say this? How does it feel rolling off the tongue? And then from there, I can kind of think about like making space for his words, because I think that's something I think about a lot is, and it's more of like a classical music kind of thing. Like I said, I came up in band and stuff, and like, you kind of make room with the other instruments for whatever's supposed to be the main voice at that moment, whether it's like a violin or, trumpet or whatever. It's like you're kind of carving out space for that instrument to say what it needs to say. And I think about that a lot with Dave's voice too. And then sometimes he has to do it in reverse. He has to do it for us where it's like, well, this riff is really cool and I don't want to take away from what this riff is doing. So, he's got to kind of work his words in a way that don't step on that. But anyways, like with Cloud Retnas, that's a very personal song to him about something that he struggles with every day. So my thought for that song was like, leave a lot of room for him to say what he wants to say. Like, don't overcomplicate the song too much. Don't overcrowd it too much. And obviously the ending is just like ridiculous because it has to be. But but like that chorus was like, it's a big part of the song, and it's kind of the statement like that sums up what he's trying to say in the song. So I'm just like, he's saying it to me, and it feels just like very emotionally heavy, and this kind of thing. So when I started hearing him do that, I'm like, it'd be sick to just have it just be simple, just four on the floor, just chug, just done, 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 that kind of thing. Because it feels like it's really like nailing this thing into your brain of like, you have to pay attention to what he's saying here, especially in like kind of music that we make. It's like, the vocals are either the most important thing that are happening at the moment or the least important thing. Like breakdown, this and that. Like silence is just as important as the sound. It makes just as an impact. So when you get to a moment like that where it's like that's the most important thing happening right now, that's kind of what I think about, less emotionally and more just like how to compliment him. We kind of say it like setting him up with a t-ball swing. Like if the ball's right there, you're not having to worry about it coming at you. It's like you give him the best, the easiest thing to work off of, where anything he'll do will sound intentful.
And so with that, you've got a couple collabs on the song. You got Phil and Jack and Johnny all on the album, and Will as well. When you're writing those songs, like the whole album is very raw, emotional, and powerful. At least in my opinion.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about like when you're writing those songs, like you said, you're setting David up, but also like you kind of got to set them up too in a way.
Yeah, that's something we talked about a lot with Josh too, and also Dave was really smart about kind of having an idea of where people should go and what songs they should go on. But yeah, we do that very much for them too. Like with Will, we wrote that song for him originally, like the ending of that song, the break, like that ending breakdown, like with him in mind, because we knew he was going to be a part of it. So, rather than just kind of writing something and going here, do your thing on it, which works too, but I think knowing his voice, getting to work with Josh, who knows him very well, and knowing what he's comfortable with, and kind of having all that insider information makes it a lot easier to sit and write something out of nothing, be like, okay, I know his voice. I know, what he can do with these gaps, or what he can do with, this sound that's happening here, or something like that. So, I think obviously we have Phil Bozeman on the record. Same thing. We pretty much wrote that part for him in the studio once we found out he was down to do it, and he's going to be able to do it. And so as we're writing it, we're just like going slower and slower and lower and lower. And I'm like, I know what I like. Like, I'm a huge fan of that band. I know what I want Phil to sound like. So I'm like, how do I want him to sound? We're like, well, all of us were like, how do we want him to sound on our song? So carving out that space for him in that song Iron Sacrament, where it's just like 5 seconds of just his vocal, it's like, that's what somebody like me would want to hear from, his voice. So kind of getting to do that and playing to people's strengths. We did it with Fear and Judgment as well, with Johnny and he's
Jack.
literally Jack. Thank you. He's one of my best friends, and I've talked about him 5 times this week. I don't know why that hit me. So many J's.
I'm not helping. The double.
Yeah. Same thing with them. Like when we got to that song, it just kind of had a vibe, and the way it sits, it lends to their voices being a little higher pitch and a little more like of a natural speaking, singing voice and stuff like that. And so we try to play to everybody's strengths a little bit. Like I wouldn't, take someone like Will and put him on a song like Forcing to Forget from the album. Like, that's a more personal song, a more album song. It's got a lot more like, emotion that means something to us in that kind of world, where it's like knowing when, setting people up like that is important. And we have a lot of fun with it. we have a lot of fun, like kind of moving people around and like having them track stuff and be like, oh, maybe cut this thing a little here, getting to kind of like your idols, like especially Phil, and you get to kind of play with his voice a little bit is a really special thing.
So you said he was your idol, but what was the process in deciding who you wanted to kind of collab with on this album?
Yeah, so I say idol because I mean he is. We all grew up loving that band,
He's
but
a freaking legend,
also
dude.
exactly. But also, like we're very fortunate to call all of those people friends first and foremost. Now, I think like obviously we talked a lot about Will, Jack. We've all known for a very very long time. Johnny, we've known for quite a while too. Like he was in Dark Sermon, and then he started doing his Cope Notes thing, and really helped me out a couple years ago. And Prison's a great band, and and then Phil, like we got to tour with them, and they were all so kind to us, and he went out of his way to make everybody feel comfortable, and him and David are on a pretty friendly basis, and they text every now and then. So we try to go for people that like we have a pre-existing relationship with generally, and if anyone's just a friend that's down to do that, I think it just makes it a little more special, and you can be a little more honest with people too, and kind of let them into your, creative circle.
And looking into like the early stages of the album, what was the early like vision for this album? Like, how many songs did you want to do? Were there any that you kind of like, this doesn't really fit, we're going to cut it, leave it for another time? What was that early stage looking like?
Yeah, so we had written a couple songs for, like I said, for the summer to put out a single, and we had just picked the best one, or the one that we liked the most at the time out of that. And there was some other stuff that we really liked too, but it felt more like these should be on an album, less like this is a standalone single statement, where it kind of neatly wraps up from start to finish. And I think we do a lot of songs that kind of make more sense listening to, in an album, where they all kind of lend to themselves. Like you hear one song, then you hear the next one, and you're like, oh, like this is, everything sets up the next song kind of, So we had a lot of songs like that, just kind of sitting around. Some songs I had been sitting on since like before Low and Empty, where I just had maybe half of it done, but we really liked it, and I just never really knew what else to do with it. So every now and then, I have some stuff like that I go back to, and I'll try again. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just not, meant to be. But every now and then, you find a spark with it, and it ends up being something really cool. I'd say we always try to, like when we did Low and Empty, we went in with like barely anything. We had like 4 songs and wrote them all in the studio. So this time we were like, we want to have way too many songs and be able to dial it back. And we probably had like 18, I think, when we went in, and like 12 or 13 that we were really happy with. And then we ended up settling on, I think, like 11 of them. And we just show everything to Josh, and we tell him what we really like. There was a couple that I was like, I don't know about this one. I'm like, I like it, but I don't know how to finish it, or I don't know how to make it work in the context of all these other songs. And, there were a couple that Josh was like, this chorus is awesome. Like, we got to make it work somehow. And that was like Sarkazine. I had written that chorus like 2 or 3 years ago, but it had nothing for the rest of the song. And I tried writing a bunch of shit to it, and it just like didn't work out. And then we reworked it in the studio, and it came out really, really cool. Like we wrote that whole ending of that song with him. Like the last week we were there, just kind of from nothing. And so I think generally, because we tour so much, the time is hard to find to just turn off your brain and be creative, because we do so much, business side of all this stuff too. And you kind of have to delegate. Like, it's hard for me to of just being creative. So that was I think our big, this time around was just like making time to do it for fun, not because like we have to write music right now to get an album done, And like I said, I spent a lot of time doing that to the point where I'd only had like 6 songs done over the course of like 3 or 4 months. And I was like, okay, I need to pump some shit out here.
And so I personally think, Low and Empty was like you're kind of finding your groove with the new sound, David, and everything. And I truly feel like this album, you've come into your own. You've kind of found your new identity, and I feel like this is Signs of the Swarm perfected. Do you guys kind of feel that way as well?
Thank you. Yeah, I think like it's it's so hard to say that. Like I don't really like being like this is our, because you hear it all the time, like this is our heaviest, but also like our most mature, but also our,
I'll say it for
whatever. No, like yeah, it's just like such a silly thing to say because like I really do like we think about everything a lot and we put a lot of time and a lot of work into everything. But I also really feel like there's something very special about like with creative things just kind of flying from the seam of your pants with it, like there's something about that energy and that kind of just like letting it happen that is, if nothing else, is very unique to you usually, if you're good at getting your ideas across. And I think that's something that helps us kind of be a little different from, a lot of the bands that do this kind of music, even though we're all, just playing heavy music and breakdowns and stuff. But I think that's where that like actual identity comes from. But I think, what I will say is I think that this album definitely brings a lot of the pieces of the band together. Like there were a lot of people that really liked Lone Empty, and it's got that. There are a lot of people say, Absolute is their favorite record, and it's got a lot of that kind of riffiness, just groovy, vibey, in your face stuff. There's a lot of people that like the really old stuff, and there's some of that too. Like, we used to be like a two-step band, and we stopped doing that for a long time, and there's some of that on this record now. So if anything, I don't think I could ever say like one album is like the definitive, this is what the band is kind of thing. Personally, I think maybe some of the other guys might feel that way, but for me, being here for a long time, it's just like it all kind of runs together. It's all kind of like it's all part of the journey, And but I do think that it is something that if you really like anything from this band, you will find something to like in it, I think.
And you mentioned Absevere, which is one of my favorite albums. It's the one that got me into you guys to begin with. I had a coworker. I was working at Harris Teeter, and he was in the produce department. He goes, "Bro, have you heard this band?" And he showed me that album, and I was like, "Holy
That's
shit,
awesome.
hard!" But
Yeah, I think that album did something like different, for the time. It's like it's really dark. Like Lone Empty is a lot more like bouncy and kind of groovy and atmospheric. And I think that that was our first time diving into a lot of, like I said, the soundscaping and like learning how to write music, and like our first time really writing any choruses. Not that we had a bunch on that album, but there were, quite a few, and using melody, songs like Dreaming Desecration and stuff like that. So that was an album for a lot of firsts for us that like taught me a lot about like what how I like writing and that kind of thing.
and with that album, I have a genuine question because I look at that album cover, and it's a sick album cover. But did you pull any inspiration from Clive Barker's Books of Blood for that album cover? Because it is
This,
identical.
yeah, I know it is. So I didn't find out about this until after the album was out, and somebody told me that that's what it was because I had never heard of it. And I honestly, I don't have like a huge hand in like art direction in this band. It's just not something I'm very good at. Like I'm good at writing music for the most part, and I'm good at playing music, but I have like no artistic vision for artwork or music videos or anything like that. Like Dave handles all of our music videos, and like we just shot one like 2 3 days ago, and we had some extras there that were some friends of ours. Then and he's like, "So what's going on with this video? Like, what are we? What's the plan?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just here to play drums. Like, I don't even know what's happening. What the plan is." Most of the time, like Dave will tell me an idea, and obviously, if it sounds cool to me, I say, "Yeah, that sounds cool." Or if something sounds not cool, I'll be like, "I don't know. Whatever." But usually, it all sounds cool. So, and I trust him to you know have that because he has that kind of visual brain. He's an artist, he tattoos and stuff, and I don't have that bone in my body. Anyways, so from my understanding, that we went to a guy that does like 3D rendering, and I think that was one of the, because so this guy had some stuff on his like Instagram page of like, you know, like a man that was kind of that like wiry look that you have on that album cover, and we're like, we really like that kind of like hollow, you know, like machine metal look thing. And I think Dave had um, sent him like a bunch of screenshots of like just, you know, inspirations and stuff. And I think that like the face with the book was one of those things. And I'm pretty sure the dude just like took that and pretty much made like a 1-to-1 recreation of it. And we didn't have that album artwork done until like days before we had to turn the album in. So once we got it, it was like, all right, send it. Like, you know, and like I said, I did. So the short answer is no, I did not know that. But from my understanding is this dude basically, you know, took that and just ran with it. Because I had never heard of it. We got a bunch of comments and shit, and people have asked me about it, and you know, they're like, "What the fuck? What the fuck?" I'm like, "Look, it's just as much a surprise to me as anybody else. Truly, like I have no problem admitting like musically, like, oh, you know, I pulled this from that band, or I took this riff from that band, and you know, did whatever to make it my own, or whatever. Like, no problem. But that's something like I have no idea. I don't read. I don't really watch. I watch movies with my wife sometimes, but that's about it.
It's like that caught my eye because I'm a big fan of his, and I was like, I didn't hate you for it. I just thought this is definitely Clive Barker. It's really
Dude,
interesting.
yeah, we had like a bit of an outrage where people were like, you know, holy shit, you just copy pasted that. And I saw it and I was like, I've never seen this before in my life. And obviously, you know, the guy who did it, he was a nice guy. He's a friend of ours, the guy who did the artwork. But I, yeah, I don't know where that got lost. Honestly, I think by the time it was done, and we were like, okay, well, you know, it's like turn-in day for the album, and
Like
all
we
right, we
can't
have
help
artwork now. Yeah, exactly. It's all right, send it out. So, and that shit happens a lot. Like, but luckily with this record, we had everything done way in advance. But like I said, I was just shooting video the other day. You know, we had done uh, some videos a couple months ago, and we were happy with most of them, but there was one of them that we weren't super happy with. So we were like, all right, you know, we're just gonna go shoot another video for it. That's fine. Nobody's fault. It's just like sometimes things don't pan out the way that you envision them to, you know. And so, I mean, you know, it's part of the game. It's like I said, even with the writing too, where it's time is our greatest enemy usually because we're such a busy band. It's like we're just always kind of pushing through, you know, to the finish line.
And so, just to wrap things up, the more serious question: you're in Pittsburgh, correct?
I'm close to Pittsburgh. I actually live in West Virginia, but yeah, I spend a lot of my time in Pittsburgh.
So the big question is: are you a Wawa or a Sheets guy?
Sheets all the way.
Okay,
We
okay.
don't even have Wawa here actually, so um, it's funny. Like our guitar player's from Jersey, and he's, you know, Wawa. We all have a, we used to fight about it, but we all have come to a pretty group consensus that Sheets has, you know, the best drunk, stoned, shitty fast food, like,
Yeah.
you know, easy. It's the best, and but Wawa has really really good sandwiches and also really really good coffee, and like, you know, like the all the options they have that you can just like grab and go. So it's just, it depends on what you want, you know. I think Wawa is definitely like healthier, but Sheets is like, if you want that 2 a.m. fucking, you know, shit food, there's nothing better.
See, like I grew up in Delaware, so we had
Mm.
Wawa all over the place. So I would get the hoagies because I thought Hoagie Fest was the shit. And
Yeah,
then we moved down here, and I'm like, wait a
the
minute,
paninis are great, dude.
dude, they have
Their sandwiches are great.
the hoagies are great, but then you go to Sheets, I'm like, well, they got better everything else. And
That's
this
the
is
thing. It's
no
like
argument.
it's truly like like I'm a big guy, but it's truly like fat people shit. Like you can get anything and then put fucking mac and cheese on it, or fucking, you know, mozzarella sticks or whatever on anything. Like that's crazy. That's fucking crack. But so Sheath has my heart, but definitely I don't hate on Wawa. I hate when people go one way or the other. Like if someone tells me Wawa is better, I'm gonna tell you no. But I like Wawa. But I don't hate it.
I mean, we just had to wrap the interview on the most serious question ever. So I appreciate it, Bobby. I'm James from SoundLink Magazine. Bobby Crow from Signs of the Swarm. We'll talk to y'all later.